coming. I'm standing here with my law enforcement partners in the Gilgo Task Force to announce the indictment of defendant Rex Andrew Heuermann, 59 years of age. He's been arrested by the Suffolk County Police Department's homicide detectives, and he's been indicted in a grand jury presentation by the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office for the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. The investigation of Maureen Brainerd Barnes is ongoing. These young women went missing between July of 2007 and September of 2010. They were found in December of 2010 by the Suffolk County Police Department, and then there was nothing, absolutely nothing. For the next 13 years, their cases went unsolved until today. When I took office in January of 2022, I made Gilgo a priority before I took office. I met with the victims. We were going to do it differently, and that when I showed up, you weren't going to see me calling the media and being on Gilgo Beach with a giant magnifying lens looking for clues 12 years after the case. What I was going to do was I was going to work with my task force. We were going to form a task force. We were going to work with the Suffolk County Police Department. We were going to work with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office. We were going to work with the New York State Police. We were going to work with our FBI. And we were going to form this task force, and we were going to work together, and we were going to use the grand jury, the power of the grand jury, to reach a determination in this case. Because the grand jury has two things: it has power, it has reach. You could obtain documents, you could interview witnesses, but the other thing that the grand jury has secrecy. No one knows what you do when you operate a grand jury proceeding. And we knew that when we were investigating this case and when we dealt with the media or whatever it was we were doing, we were playing before a party of one, because we knew the person responsible for these murders would be looking at us. So we were very careful how we handled the investigation. We maintained the integrity of the investigation. Most importantly of all, we maintained the secrecy of that investigation, and I think that's paid dividends as we've seen today. Now, I think that when we had the task force, the first thing we did, got together with Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison. We formed the task force. Our first meeting was February 1st of 2022. And what we did, well, all of the agencies here, we made the commitment. We were going to take our most talented investigators. So in the District Attorney's Office, we took ADAs, myself included. We took analysts, we took detective investigators, and they worked on a daily basis with other talented investigators from all of the agencies here. We started that in February 1st in 2022. 6 weeks later, on March 14th, 2022, the name Rex Heuermann was first mentioned as a suspect in the Gilgo case. A New York State investigator was able to identify him in a database, and from that point on, we used the power of the grand jury, over 300 subpoenas and search warrants looking into this individual's background to bring us to this day. So I'm proud. I know that this case is over, but I'm proud of what we've accomplished up to this point. I know we have more to accomplish, but I'm also thankful for the partnership of the task force, because certainly without the participation of the task force, we wouldn't be standing here. Before I thank some folks and turn it over to our partners, I just want to talk a little bit about the evidence in the case. I know a lot of people know about the case. As I indicated, the victims went missing between July of 2010 and July of 2007 and September of 2010. And in December of 2010, their bodies were recovered. They were buried in a similar fashion, in a similar location, in a similar way. All the women were petite. They all did the same thing for a living. They were all advertised the same way, and there were similarities with regard to the crime scenes. All the women were bound at the head, at the midsection, or at the chest, and later at the legs. The other thing I think that's been talked about in the media was they were bound by burlap. That has taken a life of its own in the media, and the burlap has been described or thought to be the burlap that's used at a nursery. That's not the burlap that was used in this case. The burlap was camouflage burlap used for duck blinds of hunting. Obviously it was used to purposely hide the bodies. One thing that became immediately apparent was at the time of each of the murders, the murderer, the defendant Heuermann, he got a cell phone and a burner phone, which is prepaid and anonymous. And for each of the murders, he got an individual burner phone, and he used that to communicate with the victims. Then shortly after the death of the victims, he then would get rid of the burner phone. And right away, in December of 2012, FBI CAST analysts, special agents with the CAST unit of the FBI, they immediately began looking at that cell site data. They compared the victims' phones with the burner phones, and they immediately honed in on some similarities, specifically in the Massapequa Park area. And they looked at an area of a confluence of 4 cell towers, and they realized that this had significance because the perpetrator of these crimes was probably located within this area at or around the times of the murder. And that was mapped out. That was called the box, and it was an area in Massapequa Park. The FBI also managed to do that for an area in Midtown Manhattan. And so that was an investigative lead. The other investigative lead at the time was, even though there was a significant amount of time that elapsed with regard to before the victims were recovered, there was some significant evidence recovered. Specifically, there was a hair recovered from Maureen Brainerd Barnes from a belt buckle that was around her legs. With regard to Megan Waterman, there were 3 hairs recovered from her, one from around her head area, one from around her leg area in the burlap, and then there was one caught in between the tape. And that was recovered. Amber Costello also had a significant hair that was recovered during the time of the recovery. But again, the crime scene, because it was out there for so long and because it was exposed to the elements, those hairs were degraded, so you couldn't use traditional DNA analysis on it. You would have to wait and use mitochondrial DNA. And back in 2010, the technology wasn't there for mitochondrial DNA. So the investigation proceeded, but also technology proceeded as well. And then in January and February of 2022, we formed the task force. We began working collectively. And then a mere 6 weeks later, on March 14th, 2022, Rex Heuermann was identified for the first time. And the manner in which that was done was the New York State investigator looked at a database. Amber Costello, the day before her disappearance on September 1st, 2010, she met with an individual for the purposes of having him pay her money for her services, but she involved herself in a ruse where other individuals came into the house, pretended to be significant others, confronted the individual with the purpose of making that individual uncomfortable, having him leave without retrieving his money, and that's exactly what happened. That individual was identified as a person who was between 6'4" and 6'6", a large man, thickly built, not necessarily overly muscular, but just a naturally big person with glasses, white, and dark hair. Also of significance, that the fact that he was drunk, first generation Chevrolet Avalanche with a very unique feature that was between it's a pickup truck, so it was between the cab and the bed, and that was identified. Again, that was back in 2010. But it wasn't until March of 2022 that database was searched by the task force, and this individual was identified. That individual was Rex Heuermann, the defendant. And right away there were some commonalities that came right to the fore. Rex Heuermann, 6'4", largely a large person, not necessarily muscular, but a very physically large person. He has glasses, dark hair. Particular note, he owned at the time that first generation Chevy Avalanche, but there was more. He lived at 105 First Avenue, which was located within that box area that the FBI first discovered in 2012.